The mid-afternoon lull had settled over the daily grind like a comfortable, worn-in sweater. The lunchtime rush was a distant memory, and the happy hour crowd was still an hour away. The air was thick with the comforting aroma of freshly ground coffee beans and the soft, indistinct chatter of a few scattered patrons. Sunlight, warm and honeyed, streamed through the large plate-glass window, illuminating dust motes that danced in lazy spirals. It was the kind of peaceful, an ordinary afternoon where the biggest drama was deciding between a latte and a cappuccino. In the corner, nestled into a plush armchair that had likely seen better decades, sat a woman named Sarah. To the casual observer, she was the very picture of unassuming tranquility. She wore a soft, cable-knit sweater the color of oatmeal and simple jeans. Her brunette hair was pulled back into a loose, carefree ponytail, and her reading glasses were perched on her nose as she was engrossed in a well-worn paperback. Her posture was relaxed, almost slumped, her body language projecting an air of quiet introspection. She was, for all intents and purposes, invisible. This was the precise equation that three men, who entered the cafe with the swagger of apex predators entering a watering hole, calculated in a split second. Their names were Marco, Darian, and Kyle. They were in their mid-20s, irradiating an aura of privileged boredom and performative toughness. They were the kind of men who believed the world owed them a stage and an audience. Darian, the tallest, with a sharp-featured face and a permanent sneer, spotted Sarah first. He nudged Marco, who was busy trying to look intimidating in his expensive leather jacket. "See her?" Darian murmured, his voice dripping with casual cruelty. "Over in the corner, the one with the book." "Perfect." Marco followed his gaze and let out a low chuckle. "Looks like a librarian. Probably writes poetry in her diary. A total soft touch." Kyle, the most vocal and crass of the three, grinned. "Easy 50 right there. She'll hand it over with a tearful smile. Just happy we're talking to her." They saw only what they wanted to see. A woman alone, small in her large chair, head buried in a book. They saw vulnerability. They saw an easy target. They saw a story they could tell later, embellishing their own bravery while mocking the timidity of their victim. They didn't see the subtle, almost imperceptible calluses on her right hand, a pattern distinct to years of gripping a specific type of textured polymer. They didn't see the way her eyes, though focused on the page, had cataloged their entrance, their scan of the room, and their predatory focus on her in under 3 seconds. They didn't see the coiled stillness beneath the relaxed drape of her sweater. They made their move. Darian swaggered over first, dropping his heavy frame into the armchair directly opposite her, rudely invading her personal space. Marco and Kyle flanked her, one leaning against the wall, the other hovering by her side, creating a classic box-in. "Hey there, bookworm," Darian began, his voice loud and oily. "Nice day for reading, huh?" Sarah didn't startle. She didn't gasp. She simply lifted her gaze from the page, her expression one of mild, polite inquiry. Her eyes, a calm, steady gray, met his. "It is," she said simply. Her voice was soft, measured. Darian was momentarily thrown by the lack of fear. He pushed on. "So, me and my friends here, we're in a bit of a spot. See, my car's getting towed outside, and we need some cash to sort it out. Just a loan. We're good for it." His story was flimsy, rehearsed, and insulting in its transparency. Sarah's gaze flickered from Darian to Marco, then to Kyle. It wasn't a fearful glance. It was an assessment, and a moment of data collection. "I see," she said. "That's unfortunate." Kyle leaned in closer, his voice a low, conspiratorial whisper that was meant to be menacing. "We were thinking you could help us out. Maybe $50, just until tomorrow." "I'm sure a nice lady like you understands," Marco added from the side, his tone a mocking parody of politeness. They waited for the fumble for the purse, the nervous glance around for help that wouldn't come, the trembling hands. Instead, Sarah closed her book, using a bookmark to save her page. She removed her glasses and folded them with deliberate, unhurried care, placing them on top of the book on the small table beside her. The simple, methodical actions were unnerving. It was a moment of recomposure, a shift in energy that was palpable, but which their arrogance prevented them from recognizing. They saw it as compliance. $50, she repeated, her voice still calm. She looked directly at Darian. Yeah, that's a specific amount. Why 50? Darian, off script, stammered for a second. The tow truck fee. It's 50. Sarah nodded slowly, a ghost of a smile playing on her lips. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone watching a bad magic trick, amused by the amateurish sleight of hand. Right. The tow truck fee. Kyle's patience, a thin and brittle thing, snapped. Look, lady, are you going to help us out or what? We don't have all day. All right, just give us the cash, and we're out of your hair. His voice had risen, drawing the attention of the barista behind the counter, a young man named Leo who suddenly looked uncertain and afraid. He reached for the phone, but Sarah, without looking away from Kyle, gave a minute, almost imperceptible shake of her head. Leo's hand froze. She saw everything. She saw Leo's fear, the smirk on Marco's face, the shift in Darian's weight as he prepared to press his advantage. She had been in far more dangerous places, faced far more lethal predators. This was just noise, annoying, disrespectful noise. She leaned forward slightly, her forearms resting on her knees. Her posture was no longer relaxed. It was coiled, centered, efficient. The change was subtle, but the air around her seemed to thicken. "Let me tell you a story," she said, her voice dropping to a tone that was both quiet and utterly commanding. It cut through the cafe's ambient noise like a knife. And all three men leaned in, not with menace now, but with a strange, involuntary compulsion. About 15 years ago, I was in a city called Ramadi. It was loud, it was hot, and it was filled with people who very much wanted to hurt me and the people I was with. She spoke without emotion, a simple statement of fact. I was part of a team. Our job was to clear a building that Intel suggested was being used as a safe house for a high-value target. We moved in silently, stacked up on the door, and went through it like we'd done 100 times before. Methodical, precise, deadly. She held Darian's gaze, and for the first time, he saw something in her gray eyes that made his stomach drop. It wasn't anger. It was a vast, cold, and utterly calm competence. It was the look of someone who had seen the worst humanity had to offer and had not flinched. The first room was clear. The second room, we found 3 men. They were sitting around a table, and just like this. Her eyes flickered to the small table beside them. They thought they were safe. They thought they were in control of their little piece of the world. They saw us come in, and for a second, they just stared. They saw 4 figures in tactical gear, rifles up, and they miscalculated. They thought they could bluff their way out. One of them started to stand up, his hand moving under the table. She paused. The silence in the cafe was absolute. And it took his brain to send the signal to it, took his brain to send the signal to his hand. My team leader had already assessed, decided, and acted. It was over before it began. They were on the floor, disarmed and cuffed before they could even blink. They had mistaken our patience for weakness. They saw a group of people in a quiet room and thought we were easy. They were wrong. She let the parallel hang in the air, thick and suffocating. She looked at each of them in turn, her gaze as sharp and impersonal as a surgeon's scalpel. You see, the thing you learn in that kind of environment is that the real threat is rarely the one who is shouting and posturing. It's the one who is quiet, the one who is watching, the one who is waiting, the one who is constantly, silently processing the room, calculating distances, identifying threats, and planning 3 moves ahead. Marco's face had drained of color. Darian's sneer had long since vanished, replaced by a mask of wide-eyed shock. Kyle, for the first time in his life, was utterly speechless, his jaw slightly agape. The pieces were falling into place with terrifying clarity. The calm demeanor, the unblinking stare, the effortless way she had taken control of the situation without raising her voice. The story. It wasn't a story. It was a resume. It was a warning. Before I was in that cafe in Ramadi, I was a United States Navy SEAL, Sarah continued, her voice never losing its quiet, even tone. I did 4 tours. I led teams of men into places most people can't imagine. I have been shot at, blown up, and have had to make decisions in a fraction of a second that would haunt most people for a lifetime. I have looked into the eyes of men who wanted to kill me, and I have seen the exact moment they realized they had made a fatal error. She leaned back in her chair, the movement fluid and controlled. The tension in the air didn't dissipate, it simply shifted. The predator had been identified, and it wasn't them. So, here's the thing, she said, her tone conversational once more, but with an undercurrent of iron. You 3 came into this cafe and you saw a woman alone. You saw what you thought was a soft target. You made an assumption based on nothing but your own prejudice and arrogance. You decided to intimidate and rob someone you perceived as weaker than you. That was your first mistake. Your second mistake was in how you went about it. You were loud. You were clumsy. You telegraphed your intentions from the moment you walked through that door. In my world, you would have been neutralized before you even got to the $50 part. Darian began to stammer. Listen, lady, we didn't mean any harm. It was just a joke. A stupid joke. Sarah's eyes narrowed infinitesimally. A joke. Demanding money from a stranger by intimidation is your idea of a joke? She shook her head slowly, a look of profound disappointment on her face. No, it wasn't a joke. It was a test of power, a cheap, cowardly test, and you failed. She then did something that made all 3 of them flinch. She reached into her purse. Kyle actually took a half step back, but she simply pulled out her wallet, a simple, worn leather bifold. From it, she extracted a single, crisp $50 bill. She held it up between 2 fingers. You wanted this, she said, her voice flat. You were willing to terrify a complete stranger for this piece of paper. She looked at the bill, then back at them. Here's the thing about the $50. To me, it's just money. I've been paid a lot more to do a lot harder things. But to you right now, for 5 minutes. She tucked the bill for 5 minutes. She tucked the bill back into her wallet and returned it to her purse. You're not getting it. Not because I can't spare it, but because I won't validate your pathetic attempt at intimidation. You picked the wrong person today. What you need to ask yourselves is, what happens tomorrow? What happens when you pick the wrong person again, and that person isn't as understanding as I am? What happens when the quiet person in the corner isn't a retired SEAL, but just a scared kid who has a father with a gun? Or a woman who has a boyfriend who will come looking for you? Or someone who is simply having the worst day of their life and decides they've had enough? The question hung in the air, unanswered, unanswerable. The 3 men stood there, utterly deflated. The swagger was gone, and the arrogance had evaporated. They looked like what they were, 3 young, stupid, and profoundly foolish men who had just had their entire worldview shattered by a woman in an oatmeal-colored sweater. Sarah picked up her book and her glasses. She stood up, and the 3 of them practically jumped back to give her space. She walked past them, pausing at their table. She looked at Darian, then Marco, then Kyle. Her gaze was no longer cold or threatening. It was simply tired. Sad, even. Get some perspective, she said quietly. Find something real to do with your time. before life teaches you this lesson in a way that's a lot more painful. She walked to the counter, where Leo, the barista, was staring, his mouth open. She gave him a warm, genuine smile, the tension completely gone from her face. "Could I get a refill on this, please? Just black coffee this time." Leo nodded, mechanically taking her cup. "Ma'am, that was... Are you okay?" "I'm fine, Leo," she said, her voice light. "Perfectly fine." As he filled her cup, the three men shuffled out of the cafe, not looking back, disappearing into the ordinary afternoon light as quickly and quietly as they had arrived. The other patrons slowly resumed their conversations in hushed, excited whispers. Sarah returned to her armchair in the corner, the same one she had never left. She put her glasses back on, opened her book to the saved page, and took a sip of her fresh, hot coffee. And the sunlight still streamed through the window, the dust motes still danced, but the air in the daily grind had changed. It was charged with a new, unspoken awareness. Everyone who had witnessed the scene now looked at the quiet woman in the corner with different eyes. They saw her not as invisible, but as something far more extraordinary, a silent guardian, a living testament to a strength so profound it needed no display. She was simply a woman, reading a book and drinking coffee, and that was the most powerful thing of all. The Navy SEAL had come, delivered her lesson, and melted back into the peaceful, ordinary world she had fought to help protect. And for the three men who had tried to make her a victim, the memory of her calm, gray eyes and her quiet, chilling story would be a lesson they would carry with them for the rest of their lives.